Okay, so how does someone go from getting a clear mammogram to then being diagnosed with breast cancer 2 months later? I wanted to talk about Olivia Munn today, what her story and the bravery of sharing her story really means for us, as well as lessons that we can learn from her that could actually be really important, not only for you, but your loved ones. And not to be too dramatic, it could actually save someone's life. Let's rewind a little bit for those of you that don't know. Olivia Munn is an actress who actually shared on social media not too long ago that she had been diagnosed with breast cancer. And this was actually after she had already had a mammogram test that had come out completely clear. How does this happen? Let's backtrack to when her story actually starts. In February of 2023, she gets this genetic panel done where a BRCA gene test that she gets done, which is actually linked with an increased risk of breast cancer, comes out negative. It comes out negative for her sister as well. During that time or that winter, she also gets a mammogram done. That comes out clear. And so obviously she's celebrating that as well. Her OBGYN, or her doctor at the time, decided that they wouldn't just go with that clear mammogram and they wouldn't just go with the fact that her BRCA gene test came out negative, that they would actually then go ahead and do a breast cancer risk assessment. And so this breast cancer risk assessment that she did is what actually saved her, because what happened was her risk was actually really high. Her lifetime risk for breast cancer came out as 37%. Anything above 20% really then necessitates not only a yearly mammogram, but also a breast MRI. So the next step for her was, because she had this higher score, they did a breast MRI and led to an ultrasound, which again led to a biopsy. The biopsy is what showed that she had luminal B breast cancer. And that's a pretty aggressive, fast-moving type of breast cancer. Why was it not caught on mammogram? How could her mammogram come out clear and she actually had breast cancer? The issue is that mammograms don't often catch everything, and especially if we have dense breasts, for example, it's a lot more difficult to see things on a mammogram, but you may visualize those things on an MRI. Now, the opposite is actually also true. An MRI may not always catch what a mammogram can, and so oftentimes those tests are actually done together. This is why early detection is actually so important. Just to highlight how important it is, for breast cancers like the one that Olivia Munn was diagnosed with, if it is a hormone positive and HER2 positive type of breast cancer, 5-year survival rate, if you catch it early when it's localized, is actually at 99%. If this type of cancer is caught later on, when it's already spread to other parts of the body, this dramatically decreases to 46% survival rate for that 5 years. This just highlights the fact that not only was this test and assessment that she did really life-saving for her, because the next time that she would have done a mammogram is actually a year later from that time. And by that time, because it's fast-moving and more aggressive, it might have already spread to other parts. So let's talk about this breast cancer assessment score. I actually did it myself. I'll share with you my score too. It's something that you can do at home because it's free and it's really easily accessible. I'm going to link the assessment link down in the descriptor so that you can do it yourself at home as well. It is highly recommended, though, that you also speak to your doctor about it, maybe even do it with your doctor, because you want to make sure that you actually understand what your score means. This assessment tool actually allows healthcare professionals to estimate a woman's risk for developing invasive breast cancer over the next 5 years and up to age 90, or your lifetime risk. So it gives you not only your 5-year risk, but also your lifetime risk as well. A few things to note: the tool may underestimate risk in Black women with previous biopsies and Hispanic women born outside the US. The tool also has other limitations, like it cannot accurately estimate breast cancer risk for women carrying a breast cancer producing mutation in BRCA1 or BRCA2, women with a previous history of invasive or in situ breast cancer like LCIS or DCIS also may be limited in terms of being able to use this tool and it being actually effective. The breast cancer risk assessment tool, it cannot predict whether or not you'll actually get breast cancer. It doesn't calculate an individual woman's risk. But what it does do is give you an idea of what a general risk is. If you're in the higher risk, then it lets you know and lets your doctor know that you need to take those next steps to get assessed further. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you are absolutely going to get breast cancer if your risk is high. It's a 5-minute or less quiz. It's free. and it goes through 7 key questions. The first one is your medical history of breast cancer or DCIS or radiation therapy to the chest, as well as mutation in the BRCA1 or BRCA2 gene, your age, your race, if you've ever had a breast biopsy with a benign non-cancer diagnosis, how many biopsies, and if you had a breast biopsy with atypical hyperplasia, age at your first menstrual period, age when you gave birth to your first child, and how many of first-degree relatives, like your mom, your sister, your daughter, for example, have had breast cancer as well. So those are the 7 sort of key questions that they ask in it. I ran the calculator on myself to sort of see what my risks are. My 5-year risk of developing invasive breast cancer, according to this tool, the next 5 years is 0.6%. which is actually slightly higher than the average risk of 0.5% for women of the same age and race and ethnicity. Women with a 5-year risk of 1.67% or higher are classified as high risk, and then this would just propel you to then do further testing to ensure, if we're doing the mammograms, that we're also doing those MRIs as well. My lifetime risk of developing breast cancer actually came out as 6.1%. The average risk is about 5%. As we saw with Olivia Munn's story, that lifetime risk of higher than 20% is what puts you at that high risk, and this is when you have to speak to your doctor, when your doctor may then schedule not only those mammograms, but MRIs as well, conjunctively, or other things like ultrasounds too. When should these conversations start? When should we actually start doing these assessments? Some professionals and some organizations actually say as early as age 25 that we should start talking to your doctor about some of these things and assessments. Again, none of these assessment tools are perfect. There are many variables that could actually change what we're seeing and the scores and that sort of thing as well. So just make sure that you speak to your doctor about it to ensure that whatever results come out from there, it's actually meaningful and it can sort of take us to take the actions that we actually need. So here are some key things that we can learn from her story. First of all, take proactive steps for your health. The fact that she did the genetic testing was important, although genetics is not the only part of the story. What we do know is that only 5 to 10% of breast cancers are actually driven by genes, and the rest are more related to environment and lifestyle factors. And so while genetics is key and important, there's also other factors that we do have to look at in terms of what could potentially increase our risk for breast cancers or other types of cancers. But taking those proactive steps to make sure that we're getting assessed properly, to make sure that we're doing our physical exams, all of those things are actually really important. The other thing is have proper assessments done, including this risk assessment, to just sort of try and see what is my risk and what steps do I need to take next. And this is in conjunction again with your doctor. And focus on prevention. It's really actually never too early to focus on prevention. We know that there's so many things that we can control, even though there may be some things that we cannot control. And all of those things that we can control, like our lifestyle, what we do on a regular basis, decreasing stress, diet, exercise, can be so critical and important, not only to how we feel, but also helping to reduce our risk for things like breast cancer, diabetes, heart disease, and so much more. All of these things are actually really clearly important things that we can take away from Olivia Munn's story. I wanted to say that I was so impressed by the fact that she could share such a sensitive story. I know that it must have been so difficult for her to do that, and for us all to be able to learn from it, I think, is what her purpose was. I hope that you're able to share this information with others as well, and that it helps you to take the steps that you need for your health. I hope this was helpful to you, and I'll see you next time.